Welcome to the Reducing Insurance Journal, Insurance Administration Edition. This is a weekly e-journal brought directly to your inbox. To subscribe, visit ridjournal.com. In today's issue, we are going to explore the topic insurance verification tips. You can also listen to us as a podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Amazon Music, or your favorite podcast tool. If you like video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, RID Journal. I am Naren Arul Raja, your host for today's edition. My guest today is my dear friend, Benjamin Ben Tunay. Ben is an expert when it comes to verification, and I'm so glad we have him here to talk about it. Ben, welcome to the show. And, of course, you are you are my other co-host, so I really appreciate everything you do for this journal as well. So thank you, Ben, and let's dive in.
It's always great to be with you, Naren.
So let's dive in. Our topic today is insurance verification tips. My first question to you, Ben, is, does insurance verification only apply to in-network practices?
So this is a good question. Out-of-network practices, in my opinion, they dangerously continue to accept assignment of benefit from an out-of-network perspective, which is something that I don't recommend. And so for those of you that may not be familiar with assignment of benefit on how that works between doctors and insurance plans, let me explain that for a second here. So essentially, assignment of benefit is an activity where when a doctor submits a claim to the patient's insurance on behalf of the patient, assignment of benefit is where the insurance plan would write the reimbursement check back to the doctor. And that way the doctor can only collect the co-payment portion from the patient, not the total fees from the patient at the time of treatment. So it's a flexibility sort of activity where the patient has the benefit of not paying full fees. They only pay whatever their in-network copayment is, and then the doctor would then accept the assignment of payment from the insurance company directly. When you're out of network, I don't recommend continuing to accept assignment of benefit. The reason being is because when you're giving a patient an estimate on the in-network side of things, a lot of times, especially when you're not verifying insurance, you're just guessing, right? You're trying to give the patient the best guess. But even when you're in network and you estimate incorrectly, let's say you charge the patient $100 at the time of treatment, and then the explanation and benefit statement came back, and it said that the patient actually owes 150. Or let me erase that. The patient owes 105. So you've undercollected by $5, right? When you send that $5 statement out to the patient, the vast majority of the times, patients will react negatively, right? They'll blame you for, being a scam artist or whatever. You all know the excuses that patients bring up. And so this whole activity assignment of benefit is even dangerous on the in-network side of things, because patients tend to have this sense of entitlement that whatever you collect is all they need to pay at the time of treatment, at least ignoring to hear the fact that what you're quoting to them from an out-of-pocket perspective is just an estimate. When you go out of network, it gets worse, simply because if you don't know what insurance companies pay or what they allow and all that jazz in terms of out of network, you're going to run the risk of under collecting a lot of times from the patients. And so to me, the level of verification that needs to be performed, of course, in network, you want to be as thorough as you can. But when you're out of network, the level of verification to me is simple. Does the plan have out-of-network benefits? Yes or no? And at that point, if it's yes, then you know that you can collect from the patient and give the patient the expectation that their own insurance will reimburse them directly. If the answer is no, that they don't have any out-of-network benefits, at least you can be upfront with the patient and let the patient know whether they want to continue with treatment, knowing full well that there are no benefits available. So in my opinion, in this whole activity of verification is primarily designed for in-network practices that are accepting assignment of benefit in an effort for you to understand, as close to the penny as possible what the patient out of pocket would be. But from an out-of-network perspective, keep it simple, right? Collect in full at the time of treatment, to where the only thing you're seeking is whether the plan covers anything out of network or not.
Thank you. Let me ask you the second question, Ben. For an in-network office, what are the risks of not performing insurance verification? I think you touched on it. You said, you thought it's going to be like $100 copay and it's $105, and you send the bill to the patient for the $5, and he thinks you scammed them or you took advantage of them, right? Something along those lines. So, is that the main benefit, or are there other, risks, or are there other risks as well?
Good question. There are many risks of not verifying insurance as an in-network provider, such as missing tooth clause, right? So you have that whole clause there that exists with some dental plans that would eliminate benefits. A lot of times when practices treatment plan and they're dealing with a missing tooth, and they don't know whether there's a missing tooth clause because you didn't verify it with the patient's insurance. At that point, it's a gamble, right? And if you give the patient the in-network benefit expectation and that missing tooth clause is enforced and there's no coverage on that particular tooth where the patient should be paying full out of pocket at that point, you run that risk of upsetting the patient and building this expectation that their insurance plan might cover the other part or will cover the other part. And then finding out that the patient's, owes full. It's a mechanism that kind of makes you look bad, right, to the patient. And this is the unfortunate part about being in network, is that a lot of times practices communicate to patients from the perspective of, we're the insurance experts, right? Which you're not. If you work in a dental practice, you don't work for the insurance company.
Exactly.
But somehow the patients look at you as if you are Delta Dental, right? You are Dr. Jones' practice and you're Delta Dental. Huge mistake from practices across the country when you deal with verification of benefits from that standpoint and giving patients that false expectation, right?
Right.
And so that's one example. The other example is, some practices don't participate with EPO, which is exclusive provider organization. They think it's PPO instead of an EPO, or at least the practice does, and they treatment plan the patient, give all these nice warm and fuzzies. Don't worry, your insurance plan will cover, the other part. Again, they're wearing the hat of the insurance company, big mistake. And then the EOB comes back, it says, this is an out-of-network practice. There's no benefit whatsoever. And if you did a $350 pro fee visit with a patient, you didn't collect anything from the patient, you've just lost $350, right? Because informed consent requires you to give patients a pretty close to accurate estimate on what their financial responsibility is. So legally, the patient's argument at that point was, I wasn't informed. You said that you were in network, right? So therefore the practice accepted the liability of coverage, right? On behalf of the patient, or accepted assignment of benefit on behalf of the patient. So the practice made a mistake. Practice is not entitled to collect anything from the insurance plan, and legally the patient can argue, well, you didn't inform me correctly because you represented yourself as an in-network provider. So therefore, that's not my fault, right? I would have made better financial decisions or a financial decision if I were to know that you were indeed not in network, which is what you didn't tell, which you told me that you were in network. So those are the risks of being in network and not taking that level of verification, is that you could lose money. And unfortunately, Naren, I see this way too often in dentistry today, where practices are making these mistakes and they're writing off tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands a year.
That's so sad, right? I mean, like, this is why our podcast or our journal is all about reducing insurance dependence. So it's such a nightmare to work with these insurance companies. And I think what you're saying is, so we have to verify insurance, and that's going to cost you more money, whether you hire somebody in-house or outsource, but you have to do it. If you don't do it, you're going to be in even more trouble if you are not, doing this. So let's get into some nuts and bolts. What types of methods are used for insurance verification? You work with lots of practices. So how do they do it? How do practices verify insurance? Those who decide to do it and play it safe, like you strongly advocate, Ben.
Absolutely. So speaking along the lines of the in-network practice, right? The types of verification, there are two types. There's online. You can create a login with the dental plan itself. And then you can log in, put the patient information in there. And that system will then spit out they'll spit out what they're willing to share by way of what benefits are available for the patient. Now, not every insurance plan has a very thorough or at least a complete disclosure on those portals, online portals, of what the patient's eligibility is or what types of treatment is covered. But most of the times, the information that you can obtain online is sufficient. The other type of verification, especially for extensive treatment, like if you're doing implant cases or multiple crowns, calling in is probably the best next bet. When you call in, even that is not a guarantee that you'll receive information, because a lot of times when you call into these insurance plans, especially in this day and age, okay, we're in 2023, we all have to bear in mind that a lot of businesses are still reacting from the max exodus of the workforce, right? Leaving their jobs and then coming back, or oftentimes new people coming in. That's exactly what we're seeing, is that a lot of insurance companies, when you call in provider relations, it's new people that don't have any dental experience, that don't know dental terminology. And so when you ask for information online, you have to be very patient with these people and sort of guide them through. I would recommend when you call in is to be very patient. The common theme that I hear, when we interview people on the other side, just to say, hey, how can we make your life easier when we call in to make these verification requests? And it's surprising that a lot of these people on the other side say, well, we love the fact that you guys are patient with us, because most of the practice people that call in are rude, they're mean, they're pushy, and they don't give us the time to answer questions because they're just yelling at us all day long. When you call in, you have to recognize and be aware that you're talking to human beings as well. And a lot of times these human beings, are very new to these positions, and they're entry-level positions, so they don't know dental terminology. But what rings true is that when we call in, they say we can only, on the insurance side, they say we can only give you 5 things today because, we're limited on time. By the end of that call, we've obtained, 15 to 20 different things for that particular patient, simply because we employ professional courtesy, right? We're very, very nice to these people impatient. When they become impatient, we then sort of try to, we employ as much patience as we can on our end and control that, because it tends to work in terms of getting these people to kind of like us, where they would rather much talk to us than the next practice that's, that they know is going to yell at them. So when it comes to the types of methods of verification, that's number 2. The third one is fax. You can fax in a form to some insurance carriers. Now, this is not necessarily very reliable, because when you fax in forms and request the fax back, a lot of times you're dealing with hundreds of other practices that are faxing into that same fax machine. So the chance of you actually getting a fax back is very, very low these days, primarily because of the demand for those verifications, compared to the number of employees on the insurance side that do those verifications, which is very, very limited. So if I were a practice right now, I would focus on the first 2. Use the online portals, and then call in when necessary to obtain individual patient information. Just be as nice and friendly as you can on those calls, because the feedback that we're getting is that it's tough. Most practices are being, they're just not being as kind as you think they would be when they're calling into these insurance companies.
Thank you, Ben. You said, a lot of people are losing employees, right? A lot of businesses. That's true for you, the dental practice owner. So in light of what's happening since COVID, right, with the turnover and the staffing and whatnot, and from the sounds of it, the person doing the verification should be an expert. They should really know what they're doing. Otherwise, they can really mess things up. Are dental practices outsourcing insurance verification functions to, quote unquote, a company that specializes in it, that has the expertise in it?
Yes, this is actually a pretty hot topic in dentistry now, is the workforce in dentistry. The office managers, treatment coordinators, insurance experts have sort of migrated to these work from home positions. So a lot of the big name companies out there that do insurance billing and stuff, where they advertise that it's a work from home position, it's becoming very attractive for the experienced dental workforce. So you're seeing a lot of people migrate to these work from home positions. And as a result, a lot of practices are hiring these outsourced companies to provide insurance verification services and functions. Now, the biggest complaint I hear with that is that for a position that previously cost the practice $15 to $20 an hour for insurance verification or treatment planning, treatment coordinating services. Some of you might be laughing, saying, well, mine was over 30 an hour. Yeah, you had those legacy prices where you paid a lot less. Right now, insurance verification services can push up to $40 an hour to $50 an hour, depending on who you outsource it to. So from a cost perspective, it's actually more expensive for practices to outsource insurance verification functions if you don't search really hard, for somebody that's willing to do it for less. But that's what the current challenge is now, is that most practices have no choice but to outsource. And as a result of that outsourcing, they're incurring increased expenses for a basic function like insurance verification services.
Makes sense. So you're saying there are options available, but they're too expensive, which is the challenge that practice owners are facing.
Yeah.
Are there any resources available for practice owners to obtain training and or reasonably priced services for insurance verifications, Ben?
Absolutely. So we've here at Veritas Dental Resources, we've developed training modules for functions as it pertains to how to deal with insurance. And those, of course, will be published on our website in sort of a quote unquote university type of educational format for practices across the country. And as it pertains to insurance verification, yes, we're creating and one of the key tips and tools to allow practices to obtain insurance verification services at the old legacy hourly rates that they used to pay, which is ours is mostly in that $15 an hour range, and those will become more and more readily available throughout the country this year. But I kind of feel like when you talk about this whole realm of outsourcing, and we outsource as a business too, the key with outsourcing is finding an expert within a certain field, but at a cost that is manageable, that, most of the times when you outsource, you're actually saving money as a business when you do that function. In this day and age, some way, somehow, outsourcing became more expensive. So our objective is to allow that insurance verification function to become truly as cost saving for practices across the country. So if you're interested in any of that, of course, we may not be readily available in a doctor's particular state right away, but throughout this year, our plan is to have it more widespread throughout the country in terms of having a verification service and a model that will work for any practice. But visit our website to be informed of those updates at veritasdentalresources.com.
That will be amazing, Ben. If you can cut the cost to $15 an hour, I'm sure there'll be like hundreds of practice owners who would want that. So yeah, it's a great resource. Ben knows a lot about this topic, working with insurance companies. So definitely check it out. We'll put the link to Veritas Dental Resources. And once again, Ben, I want to thank you. I learned a lot. I learned so much about verification and the pitfalls and the challenges that practice owners are facing. And I also want to take a minute to thank our listeners. If you love what we do here at ridjournal.com, tell your friends, share a review on iTunes or YouTube, and don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you are a dental speaker or a leader in a dental organization, don't forget to check out ridexperts.org. Till we meet again, I'm your host, Naren Arul Raja.